There we go. Okay, I'm recording again. So thanks for sharing that comment. I definitely appreciate your perspective there and viewing yourself as potentially a connector within your own church and with some of these third tier. One of the things I love is that as you were sharing, Summer, you were talking about how the changing demographics have adjusted around you. And again, the original thought would be, okay, what do we need to do internally to reach this group of people as the neighborhood is changing, which is a good conversation to have, but also who can you collaborate with, who can you partner with? And that's what transformational leaders do also is think through, okay, where is God already active and how can we maybe partner? Who else wants to share? Natong, do you want to talk a little about where you see yourself in the ecosystem?
Yeah, after hearing you people say, I don't know what to say. When I think of myself, so my country, we never got any liberal educations to value diversities. So I'm not used to working with people from different groups or different religious groups. And when I'm thinking about my country, we have a lot of social and ethnic problems, mainly because we were never taught to appreciate other groups and other religions. And I think that has effect on even on us Christians. I know we have to walk together along with other denominations and other Christians, but practically we are very poor. Even myself, I know I have to walk with others, but I don't know how or where to start walking with people. And as for the church planting movement, my church has planted a church just 5 or 7 miles from our place. But when I think about that church, I think we make a lot of mistakes. For example, we have committed the paternalistic approach movement. So we control everything. Even after 7 years of church planting movement, we control them from our main church. And so to say, we bought them lands and we built many buildings, and we have built house for pastors and other peoples. And when I'm thinking about that, I think we have made a lot of mistakes. Like for example, we never asked them to contribute or to share in the effort with us. We just did everything for them. And now, practically, even including myself, we are a little bit exhausted with the church. And now, people no longer are interested in the church planting movement. Anyway, as far as I'm concerned personally, because I'm working at a Bible college, I think I have a lot of potential to connect different peoples. Because every year, my Bible college, it has around 50 to 60 graduates. And these people, they go to different places like China and like Indian borders and the southern parts of Myanmar and different places. And so as a teacher to them, if I can connect my students together, I believe somehow I can influence more than what I'm doing right now. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that's good. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Natong. That was good. Thanks for being vulnerable. So, the first statement you had, you don't know how or where to start working with people. So maybe this tool or some of the other things we've talked about in the course could be a great starter point for you, especially with your position with the Bible college. One example is you could do a research project with some of your graduates and just, talk about how you can collaborate more together. Who knows what you could do, but and also thanks for sharing about the church planting movement. That's actually really common, I think. So the way that, I know you're probably maybe feeling bad about it and burned out about it. I think that's how a lot of church planting movements kind of go. And, hopefully we can do better, and be less paternalistic. And we need good leaders to be able to do that. So thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to share? Sarah, I think you've been in and out a little bit. So if you want to jump in, great. If not.
Yeah, sorry, my kids are around, so they're just kind of crazy. But
no.
yeah, I think our context is unique because we started out of a traditional church. They as like an extension of one of their ministries to youth, and so then they were in an affluent area in San Diego, and then they started reaching the next high school south of them, and recognized that a lot of the students there, most of them, the majority of them, were bused in from another neighborhood. And so then that started a whole nother kind of ministry. And then the youth in that in the ministry, they were advocating for a church in their own neighborhood. And so it was really motivated by the young people wanting to not go to another neighborhood, be riding in vans for like 40 minutes to another neighborhood. And so then we started the nonprofit, which also had a worshiping community, kind of like a youth church part of it as well, in a very diverse neighborhood in San Diego. So that's so I think we fall solidly in the second or third ring. Now we kind of have a house church, and it's got a really diverse mixture of young people, not really like older people, but I would say like my age or middle age kind of people, families, and then a mixture of ethnicities and socioeconomic levels too. So, but we also have this nonprofit arm. So I think we're kind of really unusual as far as churches go, because usually the church drives the whole activity, and then they have like ministries. We're kind of like driven by the nonprofit, but we also have we have a house church or worshiping community. We used to have two, but now we kind of have merged together into one, and that's kind of part of what we're doing too. So I definitely think we're part of the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church in the United States of America, and so it's been like we've been a total anomaly even in our denomination here. And I've been trying to help that, but we're seen as church planters, but then they also just don't understand like the community development aspect. And so it's just always been like kind of a hard thing to help people understand. And I've been trying to just stay in that place and advocate in that denomination, because that denomination is dying, and they want to start church. They want to be about church planting, but they don't really understand it, or I don't think they're kind of ready to fully commit what is needed. And so I've just been trying to stay in that place, advocating for what that looks like, helping share our story, helping find places for young people and the next generation to have voice into these current, more mainstream denominations in the United States, and like what that could look like, while just doing the work that we're doing with youth in our neighborhood, with community development. So I think that's a little bit about where we fall. And I think definitely feel like a little bit of like outsiders as far as trying to figure out the nonprofit side of things is kind of more front and center on our time and resources and stuff. And then the missional community house church is definitely like, it's there and it's happening, but it's not like the focus of like a lot of our priorities, which again is kind of like, there's great things about that, and then there's like really challenging things about that when, so yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. This is why I love teaching at BGU, because I get to hear about so many different interesting initiatives that are happening and approaches to ministry. So it sounds like you were kind of oriented, within the second and third rings. An example then, just to kind of summarize what you were saying, is if I know you have the course that you took previously, and you may integrate some of that in, but if you're going to do something kind of original for this, you could write out a case study for your project and have that be kind of one more step forward, not just to PCUC USA, but also that reverse model of having the nonprofit CCD component first, and then having a missional house church kind of spring out of that. To you, it might think like, okay, we're just kind of weird and we do things a certain way that God did, but to other people around the country, around the world, that could be something that they would want to learn from and maybe model themselves after, especially in the US and the more increasingly post-Christian context that we have. You almost have to start with, are you authentic and are you for real? And can we work together on development side before the local church expressions brings out of that. So
yeah, because I think like all of our youth are unchurched. I mean, it's crazy. You'd think that their parents went to church or whatever, and some do, or and definitely, but I mean, so many of the young people, even like they haven't found, even if their parents go to church, they have not even found, like, been forced to go or anything like that. So they just haven't found any relevant connection with church particularly, and then definitely God, or, the relationship with Jesus. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. So like, again, not to go into length with it, but then hopefully you and Summer can collaborate between now and the time to share in the group project, and just, you got 5 to 10 minutes to share an overview of where you landed. Hey, if you do go with a case study, hey, I decided to do a case study, I'm going to interview some of those students that are unchurched and try to identify why they're connecting so much with the nonprofit, and then what would interest them in plugging into a local church expression. And again, all that stuff is going to be valuable research for your context and then for your denomination. And so anyways, good stuff. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else on that one? I think I got to everybody. All right, I'm going to keep moving forward here then. I'm going to share my screen first. So I'm going to share the other 2 tools here, go through these pretty quickly, and then I want to hear from you about them. But there's a book called To Transform a City. Again, this one was not on the required reading list for the class, but I wanted to introduce this tool for you. I actually didn't learn from that book. That book was written by Eric Swanson. He was my dissertation supervisor at BGU, and Sam Williams. But I actually heard about this when I was going through Overture 1 at BGU in 2009. And Tim Svoboda actually came and lectured in the course. He was in India for a long time, and is based out of San Francisco now through YWAM. One of the things that he did while he was in India, in Chennai, was to implement a decentralized approach to city transformation. So when he had been trained at YWAM, many of you are probably familiar with YWAM. They do a lot of great pioneering work around the world, missional work. But when he was trained that if you go into hard places or to a pretty challenging city like Chennai with a lot of poverty and things like that, is that you develop a base. And your base is a building or a structure or an institution of some sort, where you kind of are establishing yourself as a bunker in the area, and then you offer programs out of that base. So if you have theological training classes, or a feeding program, an after-school program, who knows what it could be, but people from around the area come to your base to receive or take part in the programs that you're offering, the poverty alleviation programs. And so with this base approach, again, God has worked through it to be really effective in a lot of different areas around the world. What he noticed, though, is it was not being really effective in his context. People just weren't coming. And when they were coming, he was finding that paternalism and codependency were actually happening, where there wasn't much transformation happening. So what he decided to do was take the entire base model and kind of flip it on its head and decentralize it throughout the city. And all of the YWAM workers and all of the local indigenous people who were connected with them as leaders, he then said, okay, no longer are we going to have everything held here at our base. We are going to go out, and we are going to collaborate and partner. If there is no ministry to, say, orphans, then we can establish one and go out to where the orphans are and work with them. But if there is a ministry with the orphans, then we're just going to partner with what they're doing there. Same thing with the homeless population that they were working with. And what happened, it was a really cool example of how transformation started to take place in all these different sectors, in the government, in education, in mapping out, even beyond asset mapping. This was really decentralizing the entire organization to go out to where people were and empower them in the places where they were living and serving. So he called it the ministry wheel. You can see at the middle, what used to be the base is now with those spokes kind of decentralized out. So one of the things that you could do as a project is do like a ministry wheel type thing in your context where you decentralize your operations. It's a little bit of what Summer was talking about in terms of the changing dynamics in their neighborhood and kind of going out. And a lot of people maybe aren't as comfortable with social justice type stuff, but you can mobilize people to go out and serve in the different sectors of society and decentralize what you're doing. So here's a little bit of what it looked like for me as a pastor here in Pittsburgh. The church that I planted 6 years ago, the East End location, the Northway Christian Community East End, we decided to, because it's based in an urban environment, to kind of map out a ministry wheel and then identify who was doing what in which areas. And a lot of really cool things happened as a result of this decentralization process that we implemented at our church, our local church. So one example is if you go where it says tech at the top there, there's a guy named Mike who was going to our church who was working at Google. Google has their headquarters in the east end of the city of Pittsburgh. So I took my entire staff team over to spend some time at the Google offices. And if you've heard anything about what they do at Google for their workplace, it's actually all true. You're never farther than 150 feet away from a full gourmet kitchen and any food that you can possibly think of. They have regular Nerf dart gun battles where they have fun and run around the office and shoot Nerf darts at each other. They have a hammock there where you can anytime just go and lay in this huge, it's like a 50-foot hammock. You can just go in there with your team and just sit down and dream. They have a room that you can go into with your team and play music instruments. They have a full drum and guitar and place for a jam session. You can get a full massage anytime that you want to. They have a masseuse on staff. So I know you're all drooling right now about working at Google, but it was a pretty interesting thing. But what it did for Mike was it kind of empowered him. It's also a place, a lot of people who live there and work there are wealthy and kind of have it together, but it's also a little bit of kind of like, I want to call it a godless place, but just a place that there is a lot of underneath the surface struggles that were happening. So we worked with Mike to get a Bible study started at the local Google headquarters in Pittsburgh. And a lot of really cool things happened out of that. And us just kind of partnering with him and what he felt like he was called to do. If down in the left-hand corner where it says trafficking, part of the work that I do in my neighborhood here in Homewood is work with, there's a lot of women who are kind of caught up in human trafficking or they're sex workers in the area. And we partnered with an organization called Living Ministries to open up the church building to be able to have it be a safe place for outreach to happen. And it's kind of leveraging the church for really great reasons and making a big difference in a lot of the lives of the women who are involved with that ministry. You can see different ways that we've looked just to kind of intentionally get involved. And if we were ever not able to have a partnership, we kind of worked to find out through some research who was doing what in these different areas around housing and the arts and politics and lots of different examples I could give. But the ministry wheel is something you might want to consider doing is decentralizing your operations. Nathan, what would it look like for you to decentralize your Bible school, and the alumni that you have and to start leveraging your alumni as people who are decentralized? And I mean, again, this is just kind of dreaming a little bit, but lots of different things for you to consider in the second tool that we're going over. So in your project, you could describe the ministry wheel in your city. What are the decentralized kind of ministries that are happening there or sectors of society that people in your congregations are involved in? The question I would ask is, how is God calling you to participate in his redemptive mission within your city's ministry wheel? I'm actually not going to have you answer that one right now because a lot of you, when you were answering the first one, kind of answered that question. You described a little bit like where you see yourself. But as a connector and as a transformational change agent, how can you be a part of kind of mobilizing congregations to get out and serve your city? And a ministry wheel is a great tool to be able to do that. I did look in BGU's online library for the book To Transform a City, just to see if it was in there. And was not available for a free download. So they have some information about it, but that's, if you wanted to do that, I could print the pages off to you or scan them and get them to you if you want to learn more about that tool, and we can walk it out together. The third tool that I want to introduce, I'm going to jump right to that one, is really simple. It's called street signs, I call it. Marcel, you probably heard this from Dr. White when you were out in Fresno. This is a classic BGU type of approach to getting to know and exegeting your neighborhood. But you could go for a walk and look for signs of hope and signs of need. If you're feeling totally stuck in the course and you just don't know what to do, this is the most easy one to do to get to know your context. So what I encourage people to do is, well, it says right there, take a walk through the streets of your city, make a list of the signs of hope and needs. What are the signs are different during the day and during the night? One of the courses that I took at BGU, I did a walk during the day, and then at night, I went out with some friends for a walk, and that was pretty entertaining because the neighborhood I live here in Homewood, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens at nighttime. But it was really good for me as a leader and a pastor in the neighborhood to get out at nighttime as well, and to kind of see how the neighborhood transforms and how does the gospel apply to that? How can we reach people who are out at night and doing things at night that you don't see during the daytime? It does, depending on what your context is like, I wouldn't encourage you to go risk your life and do this by yourself or something, but some of you might want to do a night walk and describe for, like, maybe you have some colleagues that would never go out at nighttime in your neighborhood, but you took the time to do it, and you can share that information with the people in your city about what's happening so that your churches and your leaders can find out how to make more of an impact. When I walked out in Homewood, some signs of hope that I saw are children playing in the streets. We have some of the best barbecue restaurants in the city. We have the newest school building in the entire Pittsburgh Public Schools, Faison Elementary School. We have some new homes where there was a toxic garbage dump, that things were being illegally dumped. Now a group of pastors got together and built some homes in that area. Community development organizations. We have a whole bunch of great development organizations that are doing awesome work in the neighborhood. My neighbors are signs of hope. As I've gotten to know them, they've been real big allies with me. We have an awesome library, one of the best libraries in the city, and we have one of the newest YMCAs in the whole city too, that's available for recreation for people in our neighborhood. Some of the signs of need that I noticed are we're probably one of the main neighborhoods in the city where people go to sell and buy drugs. And I saw a lot of that, especially as I was walking around at nighttime, and people who didn't know I was a pastor had kind of inquisited about the drug situation. Same thing with sex trafficking and women who are caught up in prostitution rings and things like that, especially at nighttime or the early hours in the morning. A lot of people come to the neighborhood to buy sex. And so that was something that was troubling. There's violence in the neighborhood. I think I mentioned this in one of the previous Zoom rooms, but the first summer that I moved my family into the neighborhood, there were 33 homicides within a mile of our house. It was a really violent neighborhood. And so that's something that you definitely experience at nighttime in particular. Sometimes it happens during the day, but it's a sign of need. And also we have some gang problems. There's 44 different gangs throughout the city of Pittsburgh. 8 of them are located in Homewood. We have a lot of vacant properties. 40% of the properties in Homewood are boarded up, are just vacant land that are just kind of sitting there, and a lot of illegal activity gets into those vacant properties. And then we have slumlords that come in and buy up the properties and take advantage of people in the neighborhood. And then, of course, as you're walking around, you see litter and graffiti and lots of different things like that. So there's some of the signs of need from my neighborhood. So if you were going to do something like that for your project, you would describe some of the signs of hope and signs of need in your ministry context. And then what you do with that is you just don't let that information sit from your research project. You would interject some areas where you think you might be able to engage. And we do that, again, BGU's approach is not how can I fix what's broken, but how is God calling you to participate in building assets in your context? So what are some of those hopeful things you see in your context that you can build on? And it's not pretending like there's nothing bad that happens there, but it's really taking an approach that kind of builds on what the Lord's already doing and how you might be able to help move things forward. So I'm going to share a little bit more specifically about your group projects in just a moment, but I wanted to stop here for any questions. Does anyone have any questions on the second tool that I shared, which was the decentralized ministry wheel from Tim Svoboda? And again, if you want to do that one for your project, I'll be happy to collaborate and send you some more information. And the third tool that I shared about was the street signs, the signs of hope and signs of need in your neighborhood, where you would kind of map those out and share those in your project. Any questions on this?
I'm wondering if I do the signs of hope, do I have to complete the needs that I think are necessary to fix some things?
Yeah, I think I was more sharing. That's always a fine line. I was more trying to give the context of you can get into paternalism and codependence if you just explicitly focus on the needs and the brokenness in the community. So I think it's good to identify those needs, as you shared, and you can do a deep dive into some of those things, but also just be aware of the assets that are there as well and the signs of hope. As you engage as a transformational change agent, you want to build on some of those assets as well.
Okay, so we can identify those needs and then find ways of working with the community in order to fix those problems.
Yeah, so let's say that you do a walk and you look for signs of need, and maybe you identify something that none of the other leaders that you interact with are aware of. Like, did you guys know that an example of that is right down the street from me. There is a house it's a big house that was boarded up for a long time, and there was not really much activity that happened with it. And through walking around the neighborhood, I discovered that the boards on the door had been pushed in. And when I was walking by one day, there was a woman who was in there with a couple of people doing some things that they shouldn't have been doing. So that was something that I was not aware of up to that point, that I was then able to take back to my neighbors and to my council representative. And we did a little bit of an advocacy campaign to get the building boarded back up again. And then we're working with a nonprofit organization to transform that house into a community house. But it started with me just not being aware. Yeah. That's a kind of a micro example of it, I guess.
That's good.
Any other questions on that?
Yeah, Dr. Brian, I just wanted to say that even as you attempt to focus on the signs of hope, I believe the signs of hope, they have a way of affecting the needs. And therefore, once we would have started addressing the signs of hope, it tends to infiltrate the needs rather than be concentrating on a need and attempting to fix that need, which is a bigger problem. I think it is important that we start from what we have, and based upon what we have, we will, somehow affect what needs to happen, in my experience. Thank you.
That's a great way of putting it, Marcel. Thank you. Again, another great part of these BGU courses is that we get to hear from each other's different perspectives. So I can't say it any better than that. Any other questions or comments on that part? All right. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and then we're going to talk a little bit of a deep dive as we head into the rest of the time here. And so as we finish out our time, we're going to talk about preparing for your group projects. This is a quote from a book called Justice, Mercy, and it should be Justice, Mercy, and Humility, not Humiliation. That's really funny that I messed up. But it's a quote from Gary Hagen. It says, the church's response to the call to advocacy. Someone has their mic on. There's some tapping in the background. Here. The church's response to the call to advocacy is threatened by two opposite hindrances to obedience: paralyzing ignorance and paralyzing sophistication. So behind that quote is, we don't want to throw our hands up and just say, it's all too complicated and messy, and I don't even know where to start, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to be stuck paralyzed. So ignorance is bliss. I don't even want to know about things. And there's going to be people who you're impacting with your leadership that aren't even going to want it. They're just going to want to kind of remain ignorant and paralyzed. And so we can't stay there. We have to act. Once we have this information based on the entire biblical narrative, basically, once we know, we need to act. But also paralyzing sophistication. We can develop some complex models to try to address a lot of these justice issues or poverty issues, and we can get ourselves all tied up in knots and become paralyzed by overcomplicating things, and that can also squelch a movement as well. So as we head into the group projects, just shared that as an overview. Breathe it out, and let's just dive in, have some fun with these projects. And after everything we've read in the course and we've talked about in the online discussions, I know you're going to do a great job. But think of the work that you're doing as you're taking some time out in your life to be a great gift to your city, to your context, to your country, to your region, and to your organization. Your project that you're going to do for this course is going to be a gift to them. And so there's going to be probably very few times in your life where you pause and do graduate level studies to work through a lot of these things. And so your work matters and your research matters. So the assignment for your group project is, please think through the faith-rooted organizing tools and research methodologies that we have learned about this far. Working together with your group, select an organizing tool or research methodology that will impact your city, ministry, research, or calling. Just as a review, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a few examples that I'm listing for you of some things that you could do for your group project into your individual project. And there you can see listed the 3 ones that we just talked about today: the gospel ecosystem, the ministry wheel, street signs. Just as a reminder, my slides, I'll be uploading them to the information of the info tab of the files tab of the info section in Populi. So you'll be able to access these if you want to go back and review them. So in your group assignments, you can work with, please connect via Populi, Zoom. In Populi, there's that group work area. You'll see group 1, group 2, group 3. You can get in there and interact with each other. In the other course I'm teaching this term, one of the groups wanted me to set up a Zoom room for them, so I'm doing that right after this class. Actually, they're gonna try to connect with each other. The BGU e-learning team would be happy to set up a Zoom room for you if you wanted to do that on your own. You can Skype and phone each other, or you can email each other. But present to each other who's on your PLC and your project, talk a little bit about your context, mentor and advise each other to address this project from the perspectives of helping without hurting that we have learned in this class and the experiences of your life, remembering to keep the learning objectives of the course at the core of the project. And the learning objectives are in your syllabus. Just a reminder for your group assignments, again, this is pretty much just based off of geography. Summer and Sarah try to connect at least once between now and your group project, and you can determine who's going to go first in the Zoom room. So maybe you guys will determine Summer will go and then Sarah, or vice versa. But more importantly, just encourage each other. Maybe once you if you do a PowerPoint presentation, send that to each other ahead of time, and just give each other some feedback on where you're headed. And again, I'm not looking for a comprehensive overview of everything that you're going to research. I'm just looking for a 5 to 10 minute, you're going to share with the group about the direction you're headed with your individual project. Marcel and Margot, same for you. You're kind of geographically connected there in group 2. And then Hailu's not on right now, but Na Tong, I know that you two are probably the furthest away geographically from where I'm at. But hopefully you have a chance to connect as well. Between now and when it's an opportunity for you to be able to share in the Zoom. So it works in week 6 and 7. You're going to work with your PLC and BGU group to prepare and or implement your project. So I know you still have some of the online discussions this week and next that you'll be working with, but you can really start thinking through where you want to head with some of the things that we've learned in the course and how you want to apply that in your individual project. I set up 2 different Zoom rooms. In the past, I've had some larger classes. Last year when I taught this course, I think I had 15 or 16 different students, which was 5 different groups. So I definitely divided it up between weeks 8 and 9. I decided to go ahead and do that this time around as well, because one of the things that tends to happen, even though there's only 6 of us, is sometimes groups will go over a little bit and it can fill up 2 hours plus pretty quickly. So I decided to go ahead and have groups 1 and 2 present in week 8, and group 3 I would have you present in week 9 in the Zoom room. And I would just put this out there to your groups right now. That's how I organized it. If you're I want to try to stick to that, but if you're feeling like you're not ready in time in week 8, let me know and we can bump you into week 9 if you need a little bit more time. And that might happen. That's okay. Mostly I want to kind of build this around you guys to be able to share at convenient times for you. But that's kind of how I have it structured. If that date doesn't work for you for whatever reason, just let me know and we can switch things around a little bit. And then share a PowerPoint presentation in the Zoom room. So you can send your PowerPoint presentation to me and I can put it up by sharing my screen in the Zoom room. But also you should learn how to do that as well by sharing your screen in the Zoom room. So you can share your own screen with your PowerPoint presentation when it's your time to share. Each group has 30 minutes to share. So I built it in a few minutes. Again, it's not 30 minutes per individual. It's you taking 5 to 10 minutes each. And you should, since there's only 2 people in each group, you should be able to wrap up within 30 minutes. If you go more than 15 minutes per person, or once you go over 10 minutes, I'll probably start giving you some body language or nicely letting you know that it's time to wrap it up. So with that being said, that's kind of the group process, and that's the end of my slides that I had for you. So I know I've gone over a lot trying to get you across the finish line here. So are there any questions about the group projects that I just shared? All right.
Just one observation. You've shared a number of tools. I am thinking in my context, as you know, I'm into education. I'm thinking about a number of children who have not been attending schools. I'm thinking about raising the attendance rate of maybe a school or 2 in terms of how could I improve or raise the attendance rate, have children actually go to school, have their parents value the importance of education. And I'm thinking in terms of the tools that you've mentioned. First of all, is that something that is that you see do you see that as something that is good? And in terms of the tools, I'm thinking what tool of the different tools that you have identified, which one might have been the most appropriate? I've noticed all that you've mentioned, and I'm wondering if the case study or another tool might have been appropriate in terms of looking at something like that.
Yeah, that's great, Marcel. The 3 tools that I mentioned, just to reiterate, I know I keep saying it, but those are just, you can use them or not use them. You don't have to. I was just presenting them as we kind of drive towards the end of the class to be available to you. There are lots of tools that are in the book that we read through that you can take advantage of, that you can utilize. But for your specific instance, that's a really great example. If we flesh that out a little bit, you're involved with education, you're in an influential role, you have people that you're connected to there as a transformational leader. What research project could you do that would be a great gift to your colleagues, to the students, to their families? And if a case study is that, then you could go ahead and do a case study and do a deep dive into school attendance in your context. Do your research project as a part of your case study. You would research whatever facts you can find about school attendance, and then utilize your specific role as a case study for how you might be able to make an improvement. School children attending school more often is an example of a poverty alleviation strategy. And you, using your position as a transformational leader, is an example of leadership at BGU that we're hoping to see. So that would be, you would write that to your personal learning community, but also once you finish the course, you would meet with your colleagues and with the children and with their families or whoever any of the stakeholders that you were connected to, and you would share your findings. Maybe you would call a special meeting and say, hey, I did a deep dive into school attendance. And then I also researched some models from other countries that are similar to ours, or other cities or other parts of my country that are experiencing some great results with addressing school attendance, and let me share their findings with you. So that's what you'll do as a curious researcher, and that's poverty alleviation, that's social justice. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Can I ask Marcel something? I think it's good that we're connected because, I do Bible school clubs, and also the Bahamas has a model that worked for the country, and that is there's a mandatory law. And the government had established, in that time when that law was established school officers. And so if kids were not in school, those officers went around the community, they found those kids, and parents were penalized. But we'll talk some more, Marcel. I got some ideas for you.
All right.
Great. That's what we're looking for. Good collaboration. And an example for me, since our church partners with the public school district here, Marcel, would be that our mentoring program, we actually measure, we can demonstrate that the kids in our mentoring program, when they know that they have a mentor that's showing up to school on the day that they're supposed to be scheduled to go, the kids never miss school. So the principal loves it because he's like, can your mentor come every day? Because then I would never have a school attendance problem, but we can measure that over the course of time, that our LAMP kids go to school more often, their grades are better, and we can get all of that data through the school system to be able to kind of demonstrate that what we're doing is working. But so yeah, that's great though. Any other thoughts or comments? I won't drag out the Zoom room if you guys don't need me to, but any other things that are popping into your head that you want to kind of bounce off your classmates here or me?
Dr. Brian, one last thing before you go. The reflection journal should be written from weeks 1 to 7, right? I noticed that's what in the syllabus that still obtains.
Yeah, let me just look at that. It does say weeks 1 through 7, and we are going to have some content next week in the online discussion. So yeah, for weeks 1 through 7, it's about 2 pages per journal entry, and hopefully, if you're keeping up with it well, that you're writing those 2 pages out. And there's lots of examples in there: description, analysis, and application or integration of what we're learning.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. And the last thing that I would encourage you is, if hopefully as you've been reading through the books, you've been making note cards or setting aside some different quotes or different things. But as you head into your final project, just remember to incorporate quotes from the authors into your writing. It's critical thinking and academic writing that you're doing. So, as you go through, I said this in the first week that we did the Zoom room, but, just because you have a thought, when you're thinking about typing it, think to yourself, could I also say that and back it up with a statement from one of the authors that I read in the course, or something one of my classmates said, or some things like that. So not to overcomplicate it for you, but keep plowing through the readings, and you guys are doing a great job. So I'll see you in the online discussion, and I'm super pleased with all of you, and keep persevering. I know a lot of you are going through a lot of life stuff, so I will keep praying for you. If you do want to send me a separate email, or I'm happy to set up a Skype with you or join a group conversation that you have, if any of you are confused about what you want to do for your group project, or if you want to bounce any ideas off of me. So just let me know how I can help. And let me pray for you. God, thank you for this group and for our time together in the Zoom room today. I pray as we go about the rest of our day. I know Natong's probably about to go to sleep, and Summer's just getting started with her day, but and all of us in between. God, that you would guide us and lead us and strengthen us to move forward. And I pray that these research projects would be a divine moment in our lives where we, the work that we do to read these books and to drill deep and to apply them to our local context, that this would have real impact on real people's lives in real time. Thank you that we can learn and grow from each other and for the different perspectives that were shared today. We praise you, give you all the glory for what you're doing. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, that's it, everyone. Have a great day.
God bless.
Bye.
Bless you.